Back then, the MPV segment in the country were mostly utilitarian vehicles. It was very basic. So the G50, you could say, is a big development for the segment. We finally have it, the latest addition to the MPV segment in the Philippines, the 2021 Maxus G50 Premium. Let's start with the exterior. When it drove up to me earlier today, the first thing I noticed was the front of the car. You see this big chrome grille, which usually big grilles these days tend to look a bit tacky. But this one, it fits, I would say, perfectly because it complements everything with the headlights, with the shape of the front. It doesn't overdo the chrome. The wheels on the G50 are 17-inch alloys in dark gray color. The color of the G50 is one of its most endearing characteristics. It catches your attention right away, along with the front of the car. There's nothing else like it, actually. Back then, the MPV segment were mostly utilitarian vehicles for carrying, load, people. They didn't have much bells and whistles inside. It was very basic. But slowly, car companies started adding more features into it. So the G50, you could say, is a big development for the segment. Why so? Let's take a quick look inside. The first thing I noticed when I entered the car was how premium and upscaled the interior felt. The seats of the G50 are all wrapped in leather. It's a mix of both black and a red accent. Generally, people think you just have to slap in leather interior and your car automatically feels premium. But we live in modern times and you need to do a little bit more than that. The Maxus G50 does that extra part of it. The instrument cluster is a mix of analog and digital. You'll see the 12.3-inch infotainment system. And the clarity you would see in the infotainment display of the car is the same kind of clarity you would see in the instrument cluster. The icons are very well placed. They're not cramped. And I guess the 12.3-inch display plays a huge part. So they were able to maximize the space. It's very responsive. Like if I try to tap on something, it goes to where it needs to be right away. When I try to scroll, there's no lag. So that's something I really look for in the infotainment system of a car. The second row seats can comfortably carry 3 people. Once you go to the third row, 2 adults can comfortably ride it. What I noticed was the legroom and the headroom. There was so much space. It has the rear AC vents. Most cars would have that now, but at this price point, it's really impressive because it has its own controls for the power and for the fan. It also has its own digital display. What I like about it is the air purifier. So right now, it's in excellent condition, according to the car. And when you sit up front at the driver's seat, it's not really an MPV feel. It's a mix of like a crossover and a sedan. So it really reminds me of a minivan that's under 1.3 million pesos. So it has all the goodies, the big display, it has Bluetooth connections. It doesn't have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto though, but I would cut it some slack because under 1.3 million pesos and you get so much more. You get the panoramic sunroof, you get the automated door locks, electronic parking brake. And it feels premium for sure, especially at this segment, at this price point. The G50 has a very smooth drive. It has a 1.5-liter turbocharged and intercooled gasoline engine with a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. The throttle response is quite responsive. So when you overtake, you don't really feel like it's trying to work so hard. Now, the Maxus G50 has light steering. It was perfect while I was on city roads. When I got on the expressway, that's where I kind of yearned for a stiffer steering feel. At constant high speed, it was fine. But then when I would try to wiggle it a bit, for example, an overtake that's kind of abrupt, you kind of feel the back of the car swaying a little bit. I would say for regular consumers, the light steering would fit them better, especially when you're driving in traffic or when you're driving long distances. It could be a benefit when it comes to comfort. It has a 360 panoramic view of the car. One quick note about the camera is that when it started to rain, so I was backing up, I couldn't even rely on the camera. I just had to use my rear view mirror, the side mirrors, because the droplets really compromised the view. I was really impressed with the screen resolution and how responsive it was. So I really expected the cameras to be at the same level. So that's one quirk on the technology. Now's the time to ask the question, who's this car for? It's a bit trickier to answer that question for this car because it's kind of a mutant. At first glance, you would say it's for a family person. But then, if you're a young guy, you wouldn't mind driving this car because of all the tech. It's not really a tita car, daddy car. It could be a barkada car. It's very versatile. After driving it further, it made me think as to why we have to limit the cars to a certain segment. Because after you drive it, it makes its own identity for you. This is a car that lives on its own level, on its own stage, and one that deserves your own test drive when you get the chance.